What would it take to make me be still? To slow down, look around and tell the panic subsides. Oh, it's like a maze, constant motion, constant trace. It's filling me up, so I double down, try to find a bigger crowd. It's never enough. What would it take to make me be still? To slow down, look around and tell the panic subsides. What would it take to make me be still? To slow down, look around and tell. Oh, what would it take to make me be still? To slow down, look around and tell the panic subsides. I don't wanna look, I don't wanna see what's under the hood. I don't wanna be anything but good, and I can't be, but something's there, and I act like I don't care. Blissfully unaware, and it's killing me. If life is one big disappointment, then maybe I'm doing this thing right. But if this all points to something bigger, then I'll get back up and fight. I'll get back up and fight. It knocked me down, left me bleeding But if life is one big disappointment, well then maybe I'm doing this thing right. But if this all points to something bigger, then I'll get back up and fight. 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 And I never was much of a fighter. And I never was much of a fighter. And I never was.
Hey everybody, welcome to Ask Joe. Hopefully this week is the week we have no technical problems. Sponsored by myself. Okay, so let me get a couple of things situated over here, and then let me know that you can see and hear me okay. And then we will kick things off. So I think, fingers crossed, I got a good feeling about today. But let me know. Yes, the beard is long gone. It had run its course and was becoming its own entity. It had its own personality and everything. Let me know you can see and hear me okay. And then also, let me know level-wise. I changed a couple things up. Let me know how this is relative to my voice. Is that a decent relative volume? I don't want to blow you guys out on the video. Let me know, audio people. You're so good at letting me know. Chris Janton, Brian Jones, David Comel, Jim Edgar's here. I'm glad you're here, Jim Edgar. You know why. Can see and hear, but do I understand? No. No, you don't. Noah. Arndt is here. Basilio. Rugged Cross Records, Rob Wing. What's up, Rob? Level seems good to Nadim. Which is slightly louder? Lighting is blowing us out. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what that means. Carrie, I can see your chat. Okay, you're all... Ow, ow, something just hurt. You're all saying a little louder. I'm not sure which one's a little louder. So, oh, hang on. So tell me which one was too loud. The music is too loud. Okay, I can fix that. I will fix it by turning my vocal up louder. Problem solved. How's that? The video doesn't look too bright to me. Hang on. How's that? Okay, we're going to change things up a little bit today. Instead of recording an intro, I had someone else send me an intro, and it's hilarious. And he's actually here on the live chat as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get that set up and going. Let me switch over, and we'll kick things off. So get your questions ready. I'm going to talk for just a minute or two, and then we're going to dive up into them questions. So let me check the level on this real quick.
This includes spontaneous song.
This is so good. Okay, I'm going to go away for a second, and I will be back.
Warning. Continued listening to the Joe Gilder Home Studio Corner podcast may result in increased production of music, creativity, and extended interaction with other musicians. Other reported side effects include spontaneous songwriting, singing in the grocery store, a generally optimistic and creative outlook, and repeatedly explaining gear ads to random strangers in the streets. Do not operate heavy equipment while under the influence of Home Studio Corner unless it is a drum kit, Hammond B3 organ, or a stand-up bass, or heavy metal if that's your thing. So, sit down, lean forward, bring your questions, and get ready for another episode of the Home Studio Corner podcast with Joe Gilder. Use only as directed.
Oh my word. Oh my, that was terribly good. So everybody, that is Jim Edgar, longtime Ask Joe attender. Just awesome. So Jim was gracious enough to record that, which is just really well written and well done, but also to give it to us and let us use it on the podcast. So if you want to check out more of Jim's work, you can check out jimedgarvoices.com and go see what all he's up to. I got a sneaky suspicion that Jim does voiceover stuff. So the gauntlet has been laid down to the rest of you folks. If you want to send an intro in, just shoot me an email. Don't attach it to the email, but like send me a link so my inbox doesn't explode. But I am totally open to more of these. So joe@homestudiocorner.com. Okay, so this is the first like regular episode since I got back from NAMM. We did the thing with Jeremy Casella last week, which had all sorts of technical weirdness. I think it was just him. I think he exudes some sort of magnetic field that interrupted everything. But turns out it wasn't the recording, it was just the stream. So if you go back and listen to the video or the podcast, it is nice and, well, fairly clear. Doing the one mic thing with both of us didn't work out super well. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. Hello. Welcome. If you've never joined us before and this is your first time, you're wondering what is happening, I do a weekly podcast called Ask Joe that I've been doing for a few years now. And it's exactly what it sounds like. I sit here in this chair and I answer your questions. And we do it live on YouTube. And that's where I get all the questions. I used to get them emailed in, and that was fun. But it's kind of fun to get the live vibe going. So if you can make it Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Central Time. I know that's not good for everyone, but it's good for these folks who are here. I see Alex Dixon's here. What's up, brother? So maybe you can join us one day on your lunch break. Or if you're in Britain, on your dinner break. By the way, I'm drinking tea, and I need you British folk to tell me the right way to do this. I'm intrigued by this whole tea thing, and I'd like to tea better. So show me how to do that. Okay, so let me talk about a couple of highlights from NAMM. I am a horrible, horrible YouTuber. I did not shoot a video while I was at NAMM. I flew in an airplane out to Anaheim, and I saw a bunch of my buddies and saw a bunch of cool things, and then I flew back and, hang on, let's turn that up just a little bit. Flew back and I decided while I was there, actually on the way there, I'm not going to kill myself to shoot a bunch of video. I would probably like to just maybe be present and to see my friends, make a few new friends perhaps, and then maybe see a few pieces of gear. So I literally went to just a handful of booths. I know that sounds insane. There's booth after booth after booth and room after room and building after building full of toys. But there just wasn't much I was interested in, and I was much more interested, like I sat down with Graham Cochran for a couple hours just to talk business and life. And he and I, even though we're business partners and do a lot of things together, he lives in Florida and I live in Nashville. So it was nice to sit down with him in person, really in person. I could reach out and like touch him if I wanted to. And maybe I did. And it was really great. So got to see him. I can't list off all the cool people I saw, but people like Lidge Shaw, who lives here in Nashville. We go to LA to hang out. Pete Woj from Mix Better Now. Chris Salim from Mixdown.online. Matt Boudreau from Working Class Audio Podcast, which is great. Of course, Bjorgvin from Audio Issues. Who else? I saw Warren Hewitt briefly. We shot a little bit of a video as I passed him on the sidewalk. And Graham, of course. And then my friends at PreSonus. And then I went to a few booths of people that had emailed me that said, hey, I'm a subscriber, I'm a customer, I work for a guitar company. Come see our guitar. So I did that, which was fun. But didn't do a whole lot more than that. Probably the one fun thing I did was I went to the Mix with the Masters booth. And when I walked by, Eddie Kramer was there. So he's doing a quick mix on an SSL board, which was pretty cool. And then he just took questions for like a half hour from the audience. And there was a decent-sized crowd. So people were asking him all sorts of stuff about working with Zeppelin, working with Jimi Hendrix. And he's just a funny old dude. He was really quirky and really had a lot of energy. And I enjoyed watching him. It was funny hearing him tell a story about doing final mixes with Jimi Hendrix. They would have 16 channels on a board, and there was no such thing as fader automation. So if anything needed to turn up and go down, if you needed to ride the vocal, you had to do that as it was playing back. So they would play back from the multi-track machine through the mixer, and then that would record down to the half-inch or quarter, whatever, the 2-track machine. And that was how you did your bounces, right? So if the vocal needed to come up and down in different sections, you had to ride the vocal up and down. So they would literally say, all right, Jimmy, you're in charge of these 3 faders. I've got these 6 faders, and then we're going to switch halfway through so I can do that guitar solo ride, all that stuff. It was a performance. And a little tiny part of me wants to record an album that way. I don't care if it's on analog tape or not. That seems like too much work. But to pretend like it's on analog tape, like record it into PreSonus Capture and treat it like a tape machine, and then to mix it through this mixer and treat it like an actual analog mixer with no automation and perform the whole thing. And to me, that seems so much like if I go back and listen to a Jimi Hendrix record and I'm sitting here listening to this thing and then remembering the story that he told about how like Jimmy was like they were swapping places in the middle of the mix and Jimmy like falls on his butt in the floor and like Eddie's falling over to grab the master fader for the final fade out at the end of the song. Like that to me is so much more interesting than so I created all of this automation and then the system did it for me. Of course, that's how we all mix now, and that's totally fine. But it was just fun stories like that, really, especially about big classic records like that. It's just kind of fun to know. The other cool thing was I got to back with Eddie Kramer. He was talking about somebody asked him. Well, there's lots of questions about recording. Oh, recording John Bonham. Like, how did you approach recording him on drums? And he kind of said a few things and talked about a few things, but he said the thing is, you put a microphone on John Bonham in front of a kit and it's going to sound like John Bonham. And he almost to a point of saying it really didn't matter what I did as the recording engineer because it was going to sound great because it was John Bonham. And I leaned over to Graham when he said that and said, did he just admit to not being that integral to the sound of Zeppelin? Which is kind of funny. Of course not. But he kind of was getting to the point of mixing is much more important than recording. He kind of basically said recording's kind of easy. It's the mixing part that is where it really starts to shine. And I think there was a little bit, obviously there's a lot of truth there, and it kind of just hammers home that point I talk about all the time, to get it right at the source. We want to hear him say that and say, he's right. I must get really good at mixing, and then we continue to make bad recordings and then wonder why our mixes don't sound good. So you got to start with John Bonham if you want your drums to sound like they were played by John Bonham. And I know that's maybe an over-exaggeration of the problem, but that's kind of the reality we live in, and I think it's kind of fun to think about it. So there you go. Boom. You like that little fancy editing I just did right there? On the fly, baby. On the fly video editing. I would be horrible if I had to work for like a news crew, like cutting and splicing video live of like the Super Bowl as it's happening. But here on the YouTubes, where no one can stop me, I'll do some tiny little bit of editing. Sorry if things are a little bit louder for you than they're supposed to be. I'm trying, but okay, so let's jump into your questions. If you have a question, ask it in the chat, and I will get to as many as I can over the next 20 minutes or so. The whole point of this, it's not about me. I want to really make it valuable for you, whether you're asking a question or whether you're just getting into this and you want to know, chances are you have the same questions people here have. So if you're here in the live chat, ask your question because there's probably somebody else out there who's listening who has that question and isn't here to ask it. So they're relying on you. So don't let them down. Let's see. Inside the Mirror asks, do you believe huge artists have a bunch of unfinished project in the corner as well? I would think so, but I think they may have a lot of songs. I think when I see interviews with, especially people who are like songwriters and artists, not just performers, it seems like a lot of them, and this is such an overgeneralization, but they're completely writing. They're writing music all the time, and maybe they're recording things on the side and they're trying things out, so that they're really just always creating in between making albums. And to me, that's really inspiring and fun versus only limiting it to stuff that will be released. I don't know. That probably is not a great answer. Sorry. Will Paxton's here, says, my question is, what is your current favorite song? What's your jam? What's my jam right now? Oh, you got me on the spot. I've really been jamming out to, let's say, hone it down to an album. We'll call it the new War on Drugs, the War on Drugs record. And then I think it's the song called, not The Space Between, but there's got this killer guitar solo. I forgot the name, but that whole record is just, it's really fun to listen to. And he's got like 7-minute songs and it just works, which is just awesome. So we'll go with that one. Alex says, what do you do when you haven't made music in a while and you're scared of getting back in the studio? You get back in the studio. There's no other way to do it. You can't prepare yourself for it. You just got to jump back in, and you get it on the calendar, and you be as specific as you can about what your intentions are. Just sitting down and pulling up an old mix and moving faders around, that's not really doing much of anything, and it's not helpful. You might as well go watch TV if you're going to do that. But if it's get in there and write, don't make it something huge like I will sit down in the studio and write an entire album. Maybe sit down and say, I'm going to come up with a cool hook if you want to write something, or I'm going to record that vocal part that I've been thinking about for 2 years. I'm going to lay it down and see what happens. I really don't think there's any other thing. I get the fear. Please, trust me, I am riddled with fear a lot of the time. But one good solution to that is to do the thing that's giving you fear, because a lot of times fear is a compass that points you where you need to go. Sometimes. Now, if you're afraid of jumping in front of traffic, I would suggest not jumping in front of traffic. But otherwise, creative fear, I say do that thing. Josh Wigan says, do you have any experience with Studio One Artist? Is Studio One Professional worth the upgrade? Josh, I've not used Artist. I kind of just always did Professional. The big thing with Professional, and I'm not good at knowing all the specific differences. Having the mastering page, the project page, that alone, if you're going to do any mixing and mastering, is super nice because of the way they integrate together. Being able to use third-party plugins, not as important to me, but is important to a lot of people. That's something that you don't get with Artist. And then there's just some plugins that aren't included. I can't remember which ones. I don't think you get like the multi-band compressor in Artist, and you do get that in Professional. So if you're using Artist and you want to do something with multiband, you can't, because you can't use third-party plugins, and there's not one included, at least last time I checked. So those are some of the reasons. But if you're just getting into it, then I say stick with Artist and just go as far as you can go with Artist, because you can make great music with Artist, right? Paul says Artist is also 32-bit, Pro is 64-bit, which I still don't quite get what that means or why that matters, but I'm sure it does matter. I've talked about this before. My friend Ben Gortmaker, who, by the way, has a new record on the way. He's recorded it. I think it's like releasing somewhat soon, so I'm sure I'll tell you about it. But he did a record years ago and recorded most of it in GarageBand, which is so limited, and it's beautiful. So don't let that be the thing holding you back from making music, but if you bump up into those limits enough, then I say upgrade to Pro and be done with it. However, I would also challenge you, if you have Studio One Artist, and let's say you are, just for argument's sake, you're a musician, you're a songwriter, and you have not recorded and released a project in Studio One Artist, I say do that first. Let that be the next thing you do, whether it's a single or an EP or a full album or something, or a client project for somebody else. Do that, and then as your reward, get yourself the professional version. I'd much rather do something like that than just upgrade. Then you'll spend the next 3 months playing around with the new plugins and not making any music, which is lame. Jose David Mora Loria, what a great name, says, quick question, do you prefer having your customers per hour basis for small projects, or is it easier per day, per song? I am, whenever I can do it, I am a per project, per song, per day, per something guy. I don't like the hourly thing, and I don't think clients like it either. If I'm sitting there knowing I'm paying $50 an hour, and if I'm 2/3 of the way through a guitar take and I mess up, that has a dollar amount associated with it. Oh, great. Now I'm going to have to be here for another 5 minutes, and that's 1/12 of 50, which I can't do the math in my head. Was that $6? And no. See, I can't do the math in my head. 1/8 of, anyway. And so I'm always thinking that just as long as the clock is running, that's money. And everybody, like not everybody, even bigger producers that I know who work with really big budgets, when they quote things out, they just say it's this much for this project. And I think it's going to take this long. Come hang out in the studio. So if you're in the studio till 3 in the morning, you're not paying more they've kind of, as a producer, as the person offering the service, you kind of work some of that into your price. So if you think it's going to take you 4 hours, maybe you charge for 6, give yourself a buffer, but then there's that plain price. And so then if it takes 8 hours, you're still making good money. They're not paying more, and it's not this awkward situation, and everybody ends up winning. It just becomes this, what's the word? It becomes almost like you're at odds with each other once you go to that hourly thing. Because now they're looking at the clock, you're looking at the clock, and nobody's looking at the music at that point, right? Random Man says, question about dueling mixes. One place on the site says mixes are due at the end of the month. Another place says by the 20th. Give me a real deadline, like 11:59 p.m. on the blank of the month. Good question. They're due on the last day of the month. It used to be the 20th, and we bumped it back to give people more time. Thank you. Shoot me an email so we update the website to show that. We go in sometime on the last day of the month to choose the winner. Sometimes it's on the first day of the month, next month. But let's just say get it up there before the last day of the month just to be safe. And then you'll definitely get in. So we do the drawing on that last day. Good question. By the way, if you're not a Dueling Mixes member, did you know you can get a 14-day free trial? DuelingMixes.com. How's that for a commercial? Well done. Jim Edgar, I need you to do some of that. Jim actually says, fear is a compass that shows you where to go. Print that out and paste it over your desk. Yeah, there's actually a line in a song I released last year. The song is called It's Okay, or Okay, It's Okay. And there's a line that says, what if all that fear was a compass meant to steer you to something great? So that'd be a good line too if you want to print that out and paste it somewhere. Who says paste? This is from Timberland Recording, where do you suggest to post an online portfolio of the clients you've worked for? That's a good question. I don't do this well. SoundCloud is the obvious choice just because they make it easy, and if you post it on your Facebook, it just shows up as a player, and it's beneficial in the sense that it's pretty ubiquitous, and so you can put that on your Facebook page, and you click, it'll play right within Facebook usually. That's pretty cool. The downside is it's not the best quality. As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think SoundCloud still streams at 128 kilobits per second, which I'm not this big, I must only listen to 24-bit WAV files, but I can hear a difference from 128, even from that to 192 or 320. I don't really hear much of a difference from a 192 MP3 and a 16 or 24-bit WAV file. It's more subtle there that I sometimes don't hear. But when it's 128, I can hear it. I can say, it doesn't sound great. Now, will the basic premise of the song get across in SoundCloud? Absolutely. Is it better than nothing? Absolutely. But if I was doing it, I'd probably... One thing you can do is create separate YouTube videos for each song. Upload the WAV file. And if they listen in HD on the video, then it will be in HD quality. So you could set up a playlist in YouTube, put the album artwork for the song, and put your contact information, or, I produced and mixed this song, and then put all that in a playlist, and then embed that playlist on your website, and now it's YouTube videos that are playing the music. That, to me, is kind of interesting. Or if you have a website already, like a WordPress site, or one of those other, whatever, Wix, or what's the other one, Squarespace, and they have a pretty easy way to embed a little player that has a play button that will play back an MP3 file. That's probably what I would do as well. Something that will play back a higher quality file, if that's something that matters to you. Otherwise, the simplest thing to do is just to create a set. What's it called? A set in SoundCloud, and then you can embed that on your website, or you can just link directly to it, and people can listen. If the sound quality is not going to be the difference maker in whether they hire you, right? But if it's important to you, then that's something to consider. And yes, there's a limit to how much you can upload to SoundCloud without paying. So if it's just going to be a place to host a handful of songs, it's great for that. Basilio Raw Music says, I've been trying to finish a mixtape. I'm in the middle of recording period, but about mixing, obviously each track's done individually, but mastering all the songs should be together, right? Suggestion? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but yeah, yes, I tend to mix each song, and then mastering, I'm considering all the songs together. So I don't really start mastering until I've mixed everything, and then I'm listening to the songs on the whole. And they're all in a session by themselves, and I can EQ the final mix, and then I can quickly listen back and forth to make sure there's a consistency there, and then make sure there's a good gap between songs, all that stuff we do in mastering. Jim Edgar, who is like the is just all over this episode, says WordPress does have a native audio player. It's pretty stripped down but functional. So yeah, I assume they did. Years ago they didn't. You had to get a plugin to do that. Makes sense that they have that built in now. Carrie says, how are you doing with the DAW mode on the Series 3 mixer? I removed it because if you were here 2 weeks ago live, my board crapped out. So there was a little glitch in the beta. I'm assuming that's what it was. So it took me a long time, actually. I had to go back a couple of firmware versions and do it several times before it finally started working. So it worked well when it worked, like controlling the software and all that. I was able to do a part of a mix through it, but then it messed up and I just went back to using a mouse. So it's promising, but it didn't work well for me. Maybe they have an update I can check out. Tress says, how's your EP going? It is not. I've just kind of said, you know what? I didn't do one. I didn't do the fourth one, and I'm okay with that. I've got other things that I want to focus on that I think are more important right now. One of those being songwriting. So I've been writing more. Actually did a songwriting. Me and 6 friends went to a cabin out kind of south of Nashville and spent the day last Friday. We broke up into 2 groups, and each group wrote a song, and it was super cool. So that was kind of fun. Let's see, what else? I totally lost my train of thought. Do you use Complete 11? And your thoughts? I don't. I used Complete back when it was like version 3, I think. We got like a free copy over at Sweetwater. But yeah, I haven't used it since then. I thought it was cool, and it has a whole lot of stuff. And apparently, I just realized, talking to somebody, it's super cheap. Because I remember it used to be like $1,000, and now I think it's a couple hundred. So that's pretty cool. I just don't do a lot of MIDI stuff. I use MainStage to get basic keyboard sounds, but that's about all that I do. So there you go. If y'all got any more questions, I'll cut it short if y'all going to run out of questions. If you did ask your question and I didn't ask it, I give you permission now to ask it again. David says, what effect has your working out and diet changes had on your ability to mix, if at all? Well, I can sit slightly closer to the desk. Sorry, this is bothering me. I don't know if it's had much of a difference. I think just in general, being healthier makes me a little more likely to be more intentional with my time, which makes me, that kind of feels like a BS answer too. I don't think it's had much of an impact, I'll be honest. I'd like it if it did, but it doesn't. Don Smith says, what are the differences between, so talking about Studio One and a Studio Live 24 AI mixer, what are the difference between universal control, capture, and just recording into the DAW? Universal control is just a remote control, so you can use it to control the mixer. It doesn't have a lot of functionality other than that. You can also save scenes there. You can update the firmware, that kind of thing. The capture is just a very simple, almost like tape machine app that's very light, doesn't require a lot of resources. It's great for just recording. So I use capture, for example, at my church on Sundays when we're recording the service. I'll bring my laptop, I plug it into the mixer, I hit open capture, hit record, and it records the whole service. It'll record all the tracks, or if I just want to record the sermon, I can do that. It's just very simple. It boots up immediately, and it starts recording immediately, which is great. You can't do anything else with it other than open it up in Studio One and do editing and mixing and all that, which is what I'll be doing right after this episode. And the final question, recording into the DAW. That's what I would do in a studio setup. So here, if you come to record an album with me, we're going to record into Studio One. If I'm out doing a live performance capture, or if I'm doing like a live streaming concert here, then I'll use capture because it's less software to mess up on the computer because it's just a very light program. Program. That's how we say the word program in the South. We say program. Say it with me. Program. That's a good light program. Have you ever used MainStage with Pro Tools? See, Eli, the way I use MainStage is you can use it with any DAW because I literally run out of a little USB audio interface, 1/4 inch, and plug that into my other interface to record into my DAW. So I literally don't use it. There's no digital connection between the two. So I'm not recording MIDI. I'm not able to edit MIDI either. Talked about this a lot recently, but that's how I use it. I use it like it's an actual keyboard, an actual like sitting down at a Wurlitzer keyboard and going to record that in. If I had an actual Wurlitzer, which I would love to have a real like Whirly, I would just play it and the audio would go into my recording software. And if I messed up, I would rewind and I would play it again. That's just the way I do it. I'm not bashing on MIDI. Somebody got really upset that I said I don't use MIDI. They thought I was bashing on MIDI. I'm not bashing on MIDI. I prefer to just record it. That's just me. Copywriting song. What do you recommend? No clue. I don't care. I really don't. Maybe that's wrong, but I'm just not concerned with someone stealing my music. And if they do, I can say, hey, look, here's where I released it 2 years ago. It's clearly mine. Lawyer, help me out. I don't know. Joe, do you ever get your hearing tested? I'm thinking it might be a good idea. Paul, are you thinking it might be a good idea for me to get my hearing tested because you've been listening to my music and you think I seem to not be able to? I'm kidding. I haven't. It would be interesting because we all lose higher frequencies as we get older, which, by the way, if you're like over 60 and are doing a lot of mixing, one thing to keep in mind is typically you've lost some of the higher frequencies. So what ends up happening is you can't hear them, so you jack up those high frequencies in your mixes, and then your mixes sound super bright. You may not be able to hear it, but they are. So that it's funny, if I get mixes from Critique, I can almost tell you the age of the person based on how much high frequencies are in the mix. It's kind of interesting, right? It stinks that you can't hear it, but you can compensate for that with references and even using like a visual readout to see if there's excessive amounts of highs in your mix. There are things you can do. Totally doable. If Eddie Kramer can still mix at 75, then there's hope for all of us. Paul said, I'm not sure if my hearing is up to par after several decades of abuse in live bands. Yeah, it's kind of scary the way that you damage your hearing and it's kind of permanent. You can't really gain it back. Thankfully, I just never was in many live bands, and the few shows I played, I guess this was 2 years ago, I used earplugs, and it's not as fun, but it doesn't hurt as much. Can't imagine touring, though, and doing that for years and years in big stadiums and not wearing protection, but it's probably more rock and roll. Adam Huckabee says, Joe, in business and in life, what motivates you / keeps you from getting lazy? I get lazy regularly, but I will tell you currently what's really helped me. So I have identified a weakness. If you've seen the video and the post where I talked about my 3 words for the year, one of those words is the word buffer, and that means leaving some space to get things done in a reasonable amount of time. And part of that for me means that I've had to realize that I'm okay with planning things and like planning my schedule, but I'm not great at executing that plan because I don't really answer to anyone because I'm self-employed, so I can blow things off regularly. What I decided to do is I invited my wife Pam to be my calendar czar, which means she is in charge of my calendar and I can't add anything without checking with her first, and then she holds me accountable to sticking with the calendar. That has worked really well to keep me productive, and I would recommend trying something like that. I gotta go. Bye. Just kidding. It's time for the after party! Yay! After party! After party! I'm just kidding. Okay, so that episode went by far too quickly. So I'm going to stick around and answer any... A bunch of good questions came in right there at the end. William Bracey is done with this guy. Sorry, William. I don't know what you mean. Have you forgot about playing the row? I don't know what the row means. So if you can explain that, that would help. what is the row? You mean Music Row? Because Music Row is just like a street where like a bunch of like record labels. Or you mean the Ryman? If that's what you mean, I can talk about that. I just don't. I saw your question earlier and I didn't understand it, so I didn't answer it. So I'm guessing he means Ryman. I don't know. He's probably gone now. Sorry, William. I've had people tell me a couple times lately that I only answer. Okay, what about the Ryman? Yeah, it's still a bigger, like, long-term goal of mine. I do want to play the Ryman, but I also have just other things that are more important. Like this year, I really want to focus on some business building stuff and kind of getting that. Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. Yes, that's actually, I think, what he meant. So focusing on that, I think building the business and getting some systems in place that I've been putting off. But yeah, I do definitely want to play, and that means continuing to make music. This year, I started back at being the worship director for a new church plant, so that's taking a lot of my time, and writing music towards that end, stuff that we can sing in church, has been a part of it as well. So I hope that answers your question, William. Sorry if I pissed you off. Your question just was incorrect, so I didn't know how to answer it. But also, as you can see, these stream through. So as I'm talking and answering a question, I'm trying to read and find the next question, and I just don't get to all of them because they kind of fly by, and I'm trying to keep this train a-moving. Bartimus, earlier you asked if I sleep better with exercise. Yeah, I do, because I'm tired. Especially lately, the last few weeks, I've been working out every morning at 5:45. So it means I'm getting up at 5:15, and then I'm working out. So I'm going to bed by like 10:15, which probably isn't quite enough sleep for me. I think I probably need like 10 hours of sleep. But yes, I do. I've always fallen asleep really quickly. But yeah, now I fall asleep super fast. Bass guitar, do you go direct or do you use a preamp? Well, the clarify, preamp or amp head. I don't use an amp head. I go direct, but I go direct into a preamp. So like into one of these tube preamps, or like if my brother-in-law Joel is here, he has, I don't know if he still has it, a Groove Tubes Brick, which is like a preamp that's really good for direct bass. Worst case is I'll plug into a DI and go into just the plain preamps on the board if these preamps are taken with other stuff. But yeah, I'm almost always direct. Lewis, welcome. You're not late, although the podcast is over. But if you have a question, I'm doing the after show now, and I'm happy to answer. How much of your church music is original? Right now, none of it. I mean, it's original in that someone wrote it, but we are trying to write more. It's just a cool thing to do, to write good, true, singable music, and to have a smaller church where you can try that stuff out really easily is fun. So we wrote a really good one this weekend, actually, that we really like. So I'll probably work that one in. How frustrated with your DAW do you have to get before you end up switching? I'm not there yet, but I'm getting close. Nadim, you were just giving us a hard time a couple months ago about everybody being in Studio One. I didn't switch out of frustration, so I'm probably the wrong guy to talk to. If it becomes, a good way to make a lot of life decisions is if you can make it as objective as possible. So like, when's it right to get a new car? One good way is to say when it becomes more expensive to continue repairing your existing car than it is to buy a new one. Or if you're into car payments, like if the monthly maintenance on my car is more than what a car payment would be, then it might make sense. So like with your DAW, if it becomes a thing that you are spending more money on and you don't feel like you're getting value from that, I'm thinking Pro Tools, I don't know exactly how they're working right now. It seems like you have to pay for upgrades or the subscription model. I love Pro Tools. I miss it some days just because I like the simplicity of the layout and like the cleanness of it and the editing. But yeah, I don't know, man. You know my spiel on that. As soon as you switch DAWs, now you're going to spend a good chunk of time getting to learn how to use that software, which is not fun, which is why so many people stick with what they have. So I don't know. Home studio teacher has a video on the Presona site. Need to be hardwired and Wi-Fi to get the net down. I don't know what you're saying, Carrie. What's your setup for cue mixes for musicians and vocalists at your church? We just use wedges. So we've got we got 4 QSC K10 speakers, 2 for the mains and 2 for wedges. Super simple. And then we just use an aux regular aux mix for that. We usually just do the same mix to both, unless so far we've just done the same mix for both. So it's just, hey, everybody needs more guitar or everybody needs more vocal or whatever. Oh, Simon, you're late. It's okay, brother. Getting ready to buy some new monitors. I'm leaning towards the Atom A7X. Have you heard them yet? Thoughts? I haven't. I heard I guess the original A7s when they came out, and I thought they were great. New monitors can be really fun and exciting, but you have to learn them and it just takes a lot of time. So I kind of just pray that these just keep working forever. Not that they're amazing, but they get the job done. So I don't really have a suggestion. I think obviously I'm a PreSonus fanboy. I hear a lot of good things about theirs. The Focal are interesting to me. Spelled focal. And, but yeah, the Atoms when I worked at Sweetwater, we loved the Atoms a lot. Can we expect any new music or live shows this year? Yes, there'll be something. I don't know what yet. I need to kind of figure that out. I want to do some live streaming shows, but I've been a little trigger hesitant because of the weird streaming stuff. Has the stream been fine today? None of that weird chirpy digital stuff? If so, then I'll be a little closer to doing it again. Simon was playing guitar. That's why I wasn't here. That's a good excuse to be late. Can you use a MIDI keyboard in 11 rack? No, it's not a MIDI to converter. So no, you have to plug a guitar into it and then play the guitar. What was the name of the website you did an internet concert on? Was it a good experience and the quality? It was, so the one I've done I've done one or two on Stage It. But it has their own currency. So they have like coins called notes. And it was awkward because if I wanted to do a show that was free, or it was like as cheap as you can make it, which was like one note, that was the equivalent of like 10 cents. And then you had to buy $5 worth of notes. So then you're essentially people, if they've never used that site before, they got to pay $5 to show up, which is just weird. I remember my mom paid the $5 and then she just tipped the whole amount because she's never going to go back to that website again. That was weird, so I didn't do that again. And it was really just Ustream back end, just with a different thing in front of it. Concert Window is the one I've used the most, and I've used several times. The stream quality isn't HD, and it had some weirdness. The last time I did it, it wasn't actually listening to the right input, even though I told it to use the right input. But it does have built-in chat, which this does. I mean, YouTube does. It also has the built-in, kind of like Kickstarter-esque tip things where you can click and people can leave a tip right there. You can also set up shows where they can't see it unless they paid, or they can watch the first 3 minutes and then decide if they want to pay and stuff like that. So I've done all of those with differing amounts of success, but they also take 30% of the revenue, which is fine because it's a free service. You don't pay to use it. It didn't go as well as I thought. I think I would lean probably more towards doing a free YouTube live concert where it's just like this, like what you're watching right now, or maybe I don't even think I would embed this on a website because I want you to be in the chat so I can see people talking back to me, and then maybe have some links below with a tip jar if you want to go super lazy, or specific things that they can buy. Because otherwise, the ability to monetize is interesting with things like Stage It or Concert Window, because it's built in, and that's really helpful especially for people who don't have. I've got ways to take money through Home Studio Corner, so I can set that up pretty easily. But for people who can't, it is interesting. But otherwise, I like the idea. I'd rather it be a better experience overall than squeeze a little money out of it. So, and if I want to charge for it on the front end and give them a secret link, or if I want to just have things that I'm selling on the stream and there's just a link, you got to go check it out, I'd almost rather do that than find a way to I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Love your drone version, Gilder cams. How hard are they to control? Pretty hard. I broke mine the first day I got it. Once you get used to it, it's okay. With a controller, I bet it would be easier than your fingers on a phone. But they're pretty fun. You got to not try to be super fancy or try to get too close to things because it does not work well. Lewis, what's the difference between Out of Indiana and the EP? What are you saying, Lewis? The difference between Out of Indiana and my latest music? Or what are you saying? Does YouTube take a part of the Super Chat donations? I would assume so. I don't know much about the Super Chat donations. I know they asked me to turn it on, but I didn't bother reading what it was. YouTube has a version of tipping. Interesting. Okay. That might be that's a really smart response from YouTube to make that a possibility. So yeah, that worked. What's your favorite condenser mic under $300? This one right here. The Mini K47 from Roswell Pro Audio. I think they're $299. Great, great, great mics. You might have to buy it direct. They just redesigned the shock mount and the mic a little bit. I just saw them at NAMM. Really great mics. All my vocals, I think on all the EPs last year were through that. So if you want to go listen to it. Some friends and I want to play live on YouTube, like for advertising to our customers. Any advice for the audio routing or the video? I have a Mac Mini and a Studio Live. Studio Lives are great for this. You got to do a couple things. You got to get a piece of software called Audio Hijack, and you got to install the Soundflower 2-channel driver, which is free. You open up Audio Hijack. Here, I'll show you. Hold on. So this is what Audio Hijack looks like, okay? This is the input device. So this allows me to go in and say, on my Studio Live, this stereo input device, I want it to listen to channels 37 and 38, the inputs coming from my mixer, which are the channels of my main mix. That's essentially, it's actually something different, but that, for all purposes, that's what that is. This is just a meter, so I can see that there's some audio happening there, and then this output device is the Soundflower 2-channel driver. So this takes it in from the right inputs on my board, so it's not listening to every input, it's only listening to my main mix, and then this spits that signal into the Soundflower 2-channel driver. So then, when I do something like this is my streaming software, when I open up, see if this will work, I don't know if you can hear me still, but when I go to audio, I select Soundflower 2-channel audio driver as my audio input for my stream, and that's how I get audio. Okay? I know it's a little complicated, and that's actually a good thing because the more complicated it is, the less people are going to do it, and you will stand out. It'll become easier and easier, even over the next 18 months, to where anybody will be able to do it. So take advantage of, like right now, I don't know of anybody doing a live podcast like this. I'm sure there are. I'm not saying I'm the only one doing it, but it's complicated, and especially the way I do it, where I kind of edit it live as I go and record to cues. But it allows me to have a video and a podcast, both audio and video, without spending another 3 hours editing. Like when I get done here, I'll sit down for 10 minutes and 20 minutes and get things all set up and uploaded, and then I'm done. So it's efficient too. So yeah, I would say it's definitely worth the time and effort and frustration to get the live streaming thing figured out. The biggest thing, though, is your upload speed. You got to have at least 5 megabits per second, preferably more, of an upload speed on your internet. If you have really fast download, that doesn't mean you have fast upload. You have to test that and check it, because if you don't, then all this is kind of pointless. Lewis, I don't know what you mean by the album and the EP. There is no Out of Indiana EP that I know of. There's a live version out there. I just still don't know what you mean. Folks are trying to figure out what you're asking. My drums sound like poop, Tim E. Hope the drum mixing guide is the antidote. It is if the drum recordings are good. If the drum recordings are bad, then it won't help. An EP is shorter than an album. Yeah, y'all are funny. I'm reading your comments now. My Cascade Fathead is the stock one, not the one with the Lundahl. I bought 2 so I could have 2 for potentially doing room mics or overheads. And so since I was buying 2, I didn't want to get 2 of the upgraded ones because I didn't want to spend that much money because I didn't know how much I would like it. Turns out I like it a lot on a few things, not on everything. Joel, see you later, brother. Have you tried the M Audio mics? Yeah, I had a the Luna, I think is the one. I liked it until it started to get a short. And then I had the Sputnik for a long time, which is their tube mic. I don't know if they make it anymore. It was a pretty cool mic. A little bright, but a little kind of crunchy sounding. Modern version of Soundflower is loopback. Got it. So does loopback show up as an input device, just like Soundflower does? Yeah, my version may not be the best, but it's what I figured out, 6 years ago, and I've just been using it ever since. So until it stops working, I'm going to keep using it. But yeah, maybe loopback is better. Where did you get those gobos? There's a guy in Nashville who has a Craigslist ad that he posts where he builds them. Super simple. It's just a big wooden frame, insulation, and like some sort of cloth bed sheets around it. They're not super fancy to look at, but they get the job done. Can you recommend a Windows version for Audio Hijack and Soundflower? I know there are some. I bet if you just Googled that, it would come up. I don't know though. I know Audio Hijack is Apple only. There you go. Simon already knows the answer. Way to go, brother. Your latest EP on Apple Music is Out of Indiana. The album is also on there. Yeah, Lewis, I'll have to go look it up. It's probably the same exact thing, because I had my music distributed through Ditto, and then I switched to DistroKid, and Ditto takes a long time getting things off of there. So unless it's... Let me just look it up. Let me look it up on Apple Music. It does say Out of Indiana EP. That's weird. And it only has 6 songs. That is super weird. Huh. I don't know what that is then. I did not put that out there. You know what? I bet it was... So, I'm not one to rant about companies, but Ditto Music has not been a pleasant experience. They got all my stuff online. They had a promotion with Nimbit several years ago, but then I realized they're really expensive to keep renewing, especially if I was going to be releasing a lot of music last year. So I switched to DistroKid, which is fabulous and cheap and works well. And then I tried to get my money out of Ditto. I had a couple $100 in there from album sales over probably like 2 years. And they, I went on and said, can you remove my music from iTunes and everything, because I've already uploaded it to a new service. And they did, and then I went to withdraw my money, and it was gone because they had removed my albums, and for some reason that removed the money as well. So it's just, I don't mean to bash on them, but they've been pretty awful. Now it says I have 3 releases. Sorry, I'm totally like, my music. It's showing me that I have... This is crazy. So thank you for letting me know. I'm going to let them know. Let me see if there's any money there first. Because if there's money there, I'll get the money out, and then I'll ask them to... I got 11 pounds. How much is that in dollars? 11 pounds to dollars. I don't understand why it's $15. Well, I'll take my $15, and then I need them to stop. See, sorry, I know this is completely boring. I'm losing you. Oh, it has to be at least 25. Forget you guys. This is awful. Take my music down. I've asked you like 2 or 3 times. Please take my music down. Just not a well-run company. So there you go. Sorry. Thank you for letting me know that was there. That is super awkward. I need to make a note to check on that. It's just sad. Heard from Ditto? Okay. Sorry. This is totally... I've wasted all of your time. I hope you're all gone by now because I've wasted everyone's time. Let me answer a couple more questions and I gotta go. Any Simply recording this year? I just don't know. Both Graham and I have kind of lost interest in it. Even though it was good and he's moving on to doing some other things, I just don't know if that's gonna happen. Not moving on. He's still doing the Recording Revolution and Dueling Mixes, but you may have to just stick with the Dueling Mixes coaching call every month. if you want to get us talking about stuff together. How much the Studio Live cost? Go to Sweetwater. It's there. I don't know without looking at it. I would literally go to Sweetwater to answer that question, so you should do it yourself. EJ, sometimes I attack things right away. It's just because I'll forget it otherwise. Ben Morris, what's up, playa? I know you like using stereo XY small diaphragm condensers on acoustic guitar. I only have one small diaphragm, so would you still use one small, or would you use a single large diaphragm? You saying if you wanted to do stereo, you can do a small and a large. You can use two different mics. It's actually no rule against it, and it can sound good. And then I've done probably equal of both, large diaphragm and small, as far as a single mic. Small, historically, maybe a little brighter, a little more detail, which can be good or bad depending on what you're trying to record. If I had to give you one mic, usually I say large diaphragm just because it's more useful all around. But I say try any and all combinations. What's the benefit of using the Studio Live versus getting an interface and a control surface? The main one for me is that it's a mixer, so there's no latency. So I can plug 24 microphones into this thing, and everyone hears themselves instantly without having to do any sort of buffer settings. I can still have my buffer super high in Studio One, and everyone hears themselves right away. What splitter cables do you recommend? I don't use splitter cables, so sorry. I've been leading for a few years now, and I'd love to hear you talk about it. How long have you been leading worship? How'd you get started? I started leading in youth group, literally 12 people in a living room, so I just had a guitar when I was 13. And then I led in college for our little college ministry, which was maybe 50 to 100 people, and then at our church there. And then when we moved back to Nashville, I led at our church here in town, which is a bigger in-ear monitors, full band thing, and I led there for the last 9 years or whatever. And I was on staff there for 16 months, where I was doing it every week for a while they looked for a new guy. And now I was out of there for about a year and a half, and now I'm leading at a new church that church planted, where we're in a school cafeteria, PA system, wedges, that whole thing. But now I'm back to leading every week. So there you go. Have you done a tutorial on live streaming? I haven't, and I should. What's up, Don? Try an Omni on acoustic. Omnis can be cool because you can get them close without all the proximity effect, but they're going to pick up everything, potentially. So if you have some noise already, potentially is going to pick that up. But because you can get it so close, maybe the noise is drowned out by everything else. Okay, folks, I got to go. Thank y'all for being here and sticking around. This has been super fun. Yep. That's all I got. Here we go. I'm shutting her down. Shutting her down. See y'all.